I do appreciate y'all being here. And actually, I'll just say it, thank y'all so much for being on a lot of our classes. It is always so nice to have people live when you're doing it, you know? So we thank y'all for making the time. I know we're doing the recordings, and so you can watch them at any time that you want to, but it's nice to have you be live. So thank y'all.
Glad we can be useful.
Me too. But we are continuing our series on changing your thinking. Today, really diving deep into mental filters. And talking about, mental filters, you're seeing the world through a filter of some sort, right? We're talking specifically about those more negative filters that we can see the world through, or a situation or anything like that. There are ways you can see, have a positive filter on things, but we're going to specifically talk about those negative ones today. But the mental filters are a distortion in thinking. You know, we do have these. We sometimes have negative thoughts or feelings about a situation, about a time in our lives, about a relationship, right? Our attitude might lean towards the more negative side of things. Is the glass half empty? Is it half full? We've all had these thoughts. They are called cognitive distortions. There's fields of study done on this. The cognitive behavioral therapy really helps untwist or undistort these thoughts, and they're thought patterns. You know, if we go along and have these distorted thought patterns and they're not challenged, essentially, it really does cause serious damage in our lives and in the lives around us as well. It is a pattern of thought. There's about 15 common distortions. Thought distortions or twisted thought patterns. We've talked about a handful of them, that black and white thinking, overgeneralization, mental filters, what we're talking about today. But it really does, it skews our view of reality or what's really happening. Even if we misinterpreted something or something did happen that we didn't like a diagnosis of dementia, right? That's not a great thing. It's how we think about it that will influence how we feel about it, that will influence how we behave, how we react or respond to the situation. These distorted thought patterns can turn our perceptions into our world. One-sided, it's inaccurate, it's unfair, it's false, it's bitter. And it really does cause depression, anxiety, self-criticism, low self-esteem, hopelessness, just to name a few. It does really cause real damage in our lives. So the mental filter specifically, what this is you are, anything that happens, a situation goes wrong, a conversation goes awry, a relationship, anything, tend to pick out one negative thing that happened and discard all the positive things that went well. It has a lot to do with we're noticing our failures and not seeing our successes, especially as caregivers. You know, we notice all the things we've done wrong, but we're not thinking about the things we've done right or the things we've done to improve our skills, right? We just don't think about it at all. We see one negative thing and obsess over it. The rumination, the obsession of this one negative thing does filter out any positive things that have also occurred. This focus does turn our thoughts and feelings to now it's starting to believe that only negative things happen in our lives. You know, it's not just this one situation. Now it's encompassing most of my life, or maybe an area of my life that only negative things happen. Which is a form of overgeneralization when you're thinking you only have negative things happen in your life. So here's a good example of what mental filters can look like. So this lady writes a blog. She's getting all sorts of comments. One comment is, "This is stupid." But all the other comments is like, "This is, I super like this. These are wise words. Great post. Thank you." Well, she's focusing on that one comment out of all the positive ones that says, "This is stupid." And now she thinks her whole blog is stupid. Can we identify with this? I know I can absolutely identify with this. But if we can just understand the consequences of focusing on, well, that one comment, now I think my whole blog is stupid, or my whole career path is stupid, or I don't know what I'm doing, I'm inadequate, shouldn't be doing this, really does. It harms our performance, it damages our creativity, it damages our problem solving, damages our self-esteem and who we are. And when we have that damaged self-perception, then it does damage or change how we behave, and can very easily damage relationships around us. A mental filter makes things appear different than they actually are. The only person you are fooling is yourself. Like that, it does make things appear different than what is actually happening when we have that mental filter. So mental filters give a very narrow view of the situation to where we cannot see the reality, see things as they really are, or see a situation in the right context. And mental filters are driven largely by our past experiences that we've had. In past experiences, we tend to create mental models, or how we think things should go or are going to go. And this exists in our minds, and we project that model that we've already experienced towards this new situation. It's a biased view, and it keeps our thinking within this one little box. We can't get out of the box, right? So it keeps us from seeing other perspectives or other possibilities. And an example I have, and it's a personal example that I think fits so well, is, so the past couple of years, the holidays are coming up, right? So I've kind of been at the forefront of my mind, or just kind of nagging at me, that the holidays are coming up, and we always have a big family get together, a big meal with all the extended family that's in town, and just do a big meal for Thanksgiving, Christmas, just the fall. You might have just kind of a fall family dinner, which I know will be different this year because of COVID. But what I am focusing on is the past couple of years, I have had an uncomfortable encounter with one person. Awkward, nothing was abusive or anything like that. It was just uncomfortable, and it was awkward. And it really, I made it solely the whole family dinner, because I was focused on that one encounter with that one person. So what happens is, as I'm learning about changing my own thinking through this process or through this series, is that it's not fair to that one person. I don't know where they were coming from. I don't know what they are dealing with, right before they got to the dinner either. I don't know them very well at all, actually. It's a new member to the family, and we don't see each other except for maybe a couple of times a year at a dinner with a bunch of people around. So it's hard to get to know that person. So it's not fair to that person. It's not fair to me or anybody else that I drag into my thoughts either. Because I have my boyfriend and my sister or brother that I tell my experiences to. So now I've tarnished their experience too. And that's not fair to them. It takes away from the enjoyment of the holiday meal. Especially this anticipation of that holiday meal, like, oh gosh, is that person going to be there? Oh, am I going to have to sit by them? What am I going to say to them? So it ruins that anticipation of it, when normally I get caught up in the excitement of it, and I get to see everybody, and I need to make sure and tell them, update people this way, and I want to ask about so-and-so. That excitement of it. And it also really does cause me, I know last year it does cause anxiety, which upsets my stomach. And in turn, I can't enjoy the meal anyway. So it's really just damaging all across the board. And that all came from this model I put in my head because of what had happened in the past. I'm projecting that on what's going to happen this year. And that's not accurate at all. It's not seeing it in the right context. So some other examples. You focus on one negative comment in an otherwise positive email from your boss, and obsess about that one negative comment for the rest of the day or the week or the month or for that project timeline, which can lead to resentment towards your boss, insecurity, poor performance, low self-esteem. Another example is you bake a cake for your dad's birthday party. Everybody comes, gets together, has a great time, but dad didn't eat any of the cake that you made. So you filter out the wonderful party, all the people that came to see dad. He enjoyed himself, and you obsess that he didn't eat the cake. You must be a lousy baker. Or I should have made a different flavor of cake. And that's what you're focusing on and not taking into account the rest of the story. And an example, Edmund is an expert in his field and was asked to present at a one-day workshop at a local college. During the presentation, he notices that a student walks out of the room and never returns. After class, many students come up to him and thank him for his valuable information. However, Edmund drives home feeling angry at that one student who left. Edmund also keeps anxiously self-doubting his work, wondering if that student would have stayed if his lecture had been more interesting. So Edmund's filtering out all the positive feedback he got and focusing on that one person that walked out. And quite honestly, we don't know why he walked out. He couldn't have an appointment. He was already scheduled to leave early. Maybe he had to go to use the restroom. Maybe he had a phone call. Maybe he didn't like what you had to say. It could be that too, but it's that one person, and that's focusing on that one thing and not taking into account all the positive stuff. I think we can see how that quickly ruins a situation or can ruin a lot of stuff. So let's watch this quick 3-minute video about mental filters.
Welcome to lesson 3 of the free anxiety relief course. In this lesson, you'll learn the third cognitive distortion, mental filter. Mental filter is when you pick out a negative detail and dwell on it exclusively to the point where the entire situation seems negative. It's kind of like looking in a mirror that hides all of your good features and only shows the bad. It's like overgeneralization, but overgeneralization is more like thinking the same event keeps happening to you over and over in your life. Mental filter is looking at a single event or thing and letting the negative details take all of your attention. When you're wearing the glasses of mental filtering, the negative details stick out so boldly that you can't see the positives. You could win a game 99 times, but the only game you think about is the one you lost. Do you see why that's a cognitive distortion? The brain filters out all of the good details, so you create a picture of the world based on the negative details only. You ignore some of the evidence, so there's no way you can create an accurate picture of reality. The key to overcoming this is to be less focused on the details. Look at the overall picture and draw a rational, objective conclusion from that. You want to see an example? Joey gives a presentation. One person walks out halfway through, and at the end of the presentation, the audience stands and claps. Later that day, Joey thinks to himself, there must have been something wrong with my presentation. One person walked out. Joey ignores the fact that the audience stood and clapped for him, and only focuses on the one person who left, thereby thinking the whole presentation was bad. What he should think instead is, my presentation was good. People stood and clapped. Let's do another example. Carrie takes an exam and gets 25 out of 30 questions correct. She thinks, I can't believe I missed 5 questions. I never do well in that subject. This thought has 2 cognitive distortions. Can you tell which is mental filtering and which is overgeneralization? I can't believe I missed 5 questions is mental filtering. She could just as easily say, I can't believe I got 25 questions right, and I never do well in that subject is overgeneralization because she treats the mistake as a recurring pattern. What should Carrie think instead? Leave a comment below with your answer. What she could think instead is, I got 25 out of 30 correct. So when you catch yourself dwelling on the negative details, try to do the opposite. Focus on the positive details, and the negative ones won't seem so bad. In the next lesson, we'll learn the 4th cognitive distortion.
Okay. So I hope that video helped explain a little bit better what mental filtering is.
It's called disqualifying.
But great news. we can change how we think and change our mental filters or get rid of those filters too. So it is a reminder, our thoughts, what we tell ourselves, influences our emotions and our beliefs. Our emotions and our beliefs, what we feel, what we believe, influences our actions and our decisions, and how we act and the decisions we make influence our thoughts and our beliefs. You see the cyclical cycle here. So we want to make sure that we're having positive thoughts. What we're telling ourselves is true. For one thing, we're not telling ourselves something we made up or that's false. In the positive stuff that influence our emotions and beliefs and how we behave and the decisions we make. So how we can start to change our thinking. In the video, he said, don't focus on the details. Just look at the situation or the event or even the conversation as a large picture. So, large picture-wise, everything went pretty well. There might have been a couple of hiccups or a few roadblocks, but everything went well. So we're looking at the full picture and not just all the details. So that's one way to start changing that mental filter. Another thing is to write down all the good things that happened or all the good things that are happening. It might be you're just at a time of your life where you're thinking negative and seeing the negative in everything. So it might just be your time of life or if it's a situation or relationship. All the good things about it. And this can be anything from something really small that somebody held the door open for me, all the way up to a big thing that, all the family got together to celebrate. And how great is that? It happens so rarely. The more positive things you can write down, the more it's going to counteract that negative. And it's going to start to break the pattern of us obsessing over the negative too. You can ask a trusted friend also to help you identify positive things. Sometimes it's kind of hard at first to start identifying positive things, or maybe you may not see everything that's positive or the good things that are going well. And I will say you also have to be proactive about it or disciplined about it. At first, it can be really hard to do that, but if you make yourself essentially do this, and I say write it down, I'm not just thinking about it, you actually want to write it down, maybe tell somebody else, have a conversation about it, because it's going to get into your subconscious quicker if you write it down or tell somebody else the positive things. And we're trying to change this mental filter as soon as possible, right? Trying to break that habit of the obsessing over the negative. So write down all the good things, tell somebody else about the good things. So we're having to choose the experiences that we want to focus on, because we sometimes have to actively divert our thoughts to the positive things, especially when we start veering towards the negative again. Because at first that's just kind of the route I lean towards, So I have to actively divert my thoughts to the positive stuff. And sometimes you might have to fake it till you make it. You might not think, well, these positives are really dumb. Oh, you know what I'm saying? So we're kind of faking it first, but the more you do it, that's what you're feeding yourself thought-wise, the more you're going to start to believe it, and that's going to change your behaviors. Another thing is to stop and think about what you're thinking. If we do not take the time to notice what we are thinking, then what happens is we go into that reactive phase, or we have a reactive response, or we react to a situation, and most of the time we regret that reaction that we had if we're not thinking about what we think. If we are stopping to think about what we think and write down positives and do all other type of thought work, we're going to respond to a situation or a person or a conversation in a better way. And we want to ask if our thoughts are helpful and if they serve you well, or if they are causing more damage. So some specific questions to ask as you're thinking about your thinking. Just ask, is this true? Is this thought I have, or this perception I have, is this true? Is there anything else that could also be true or be just as true as my thought? Is there another way to think about this? And the statement is, I can choose to see this in a more positive light, right? And then would this new way of thinking, this new positive light way of thinking, serve me better? So there's just some good questions, kind of a worksheet to kind of work through as we're thinking about our thinking and changing these mental filters. And I got this from a life coach. She has a lot of online stuff. Teresa Jones, coachtoliving.com is her website. But this is what she says, because I couldn't say it any better. But changing our thoughts can mean the difference between sulking through life, stressed, depressed, or defeated, and walking about in the world with peace and happiness. So a good tool to use is to examine things within a continuum, and just about everything in life can be put into a continuum. How we view a situation, a relationship, conversation can be assessed through the continuum on the screen there. So do we live more in the scared, mad, sad area of the continuum, or in the more fearless, at peace, happy side of the continuum? And where do we want to be on this continuum, right? The healthiest place is to be in the middle, hovering somewhere between the 3 and the 8. And most of the time, maybe hovering between 4 and 6 can be better. That's what we want to strive for. To be at a 10 can mean that you're in denial about something. And being at a 1 generally means that you're paralyzed and you can't move freely about in your life or within that relationship or that situation, right? If you are too far out on either end of the continuum, do all the steps that we've just talked about. Not looking so much at the details, writing down positive things, asking yourself the questions about your thinking. Is that true? Is there a different way to think about it? And if we do this often enough, we've got to do it regularly, you will begin to see things more calmly and more peacefully. So unfortunately, all this thought work does have to be done on a regular basis. We can't just do it once and our thoughts change to the way we want them to. It does have to be done often. So again, what are we telling ourselves? Because what we tell ourselves influences our emotions and beliefs. Our emotions and beliefs influence our actions and our decisions, and our how we behave, and the decisions we make influence our thoughts. So we want to make sure on this cycle here that we got positive things that we're telling ourselves. Keep in mind that changing a distorted thought pattern, any of them, is a process. Like I said, we got to continuously work on it. And the goal is progress, not perfection. It does take daily discipline. And a mistake is proof of progress. We're not going to get it right every time by any means, but knowing that at least, hey, I identified I didn't do that so well. At least I'm identifying that now, and I know the steps to take to change that. Live in the present. We cannot change the past, and we can't predict the future. And we have the power to control our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors, and that is empowering. And we don't have to go through this alone. Talk to trusted people who can help us see it differently, see more positive things, and challenge our distorted thought patterns. We really need those people in our lives to really kind of keep us in check. And also maybe hopefully we can be that for somebody else too. This is our information about James L. West. You have my contact information and Holly's as well. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time. But now, are there any questions or comments or?
I would just make one comment going back a few slides to where you said sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it. It reminded me of something that I don't hear as much anymore, but that I was taught more years ago than I want to acknowledge. And that is that it's easier to act yourself into a new way of feeling than to feel yourself into a new way of acting. And so we don't want to, most of us don't want to live life anxious and depressed. And so sometimes we just have to act that way until we can get those feelings to match up.
Say that again, act yourself into
it's easier to act yourself into a new way of feeling than to feel yourself into a new way of acting.
I like that. Carolyn, can I steal that from you?
Well, of course, it wasn't mine. It was from a counseling course.
Well,
yes, but I used to hear that all the time, but I don't hear it as much anymore as I used to.
That's nice. I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or sharing experiences?
Yeah, can I share?
Yes.
So I'm dealing with my husband, who's mid-stage. But before that, my mom had vascular dementia from a stroke, and she lived with us. So I was juggling both of them. And I mean, it worked out. But since I've been taking these classes, and I feel so much more prepared for what's coming, but I find myself feeling guilty that I didn't know this much. I didn't have this knowledge with my mom, even though it was great and I gave her everything. She lived with us. I just still found myself feeling guilty that I didn't know about y'all. I didn't know about these classes. I had some information from the Alzheimer's Association.
Debbie, I lost you. You froze. You can hear me. Give me a second. You froze on me.
So now, after this class, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I need to focus on that I was able to have her here at home and that she was cared for and loved, and that it was a positive thing, not taking away anything from her or her care. And I can't go back and undo that. I haven't gone through these classes with y'all yet. So I'm going to do better about that. So I appreciate it. This was a good class.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a similar experience. I mean, first of all, we do hear that a lot. I wish I would have known about these classes sooner, or I wish I would have known about, just had this information sooner. I mean, that is a extremely common comment we get, or feeling that we get. But I find myself, I have to tell myself this in regards to my mother too, because even though I had some information at the tips of my finger, I didn't really use it. It's different when it's a family member than like all your knowledge kind of goes out the door, and what to do next just goes out the door. So I had that. So I do have some guilt feelings about that, but I do have to tell myself that we did the best we could with mom, with the information we had at the time.
Yes.
And that is a sentence that I have to tell myself frequently about that, because we did. I mean, we loved her. She had a great life and everything. With the information we had at the time, we did the best we could.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to be happy about that and be positive about that.
Yeah. I wouldn't change a thing about her circumstances, or, I mean, that she got, that we had her here. But, I think back about when she was hallucinating and she would think that there were 10 baby kittens under the bed. And I would think, oh my gosh, I have to bring her back to reality. But I should have said, and aren't they cute? And, letting me go into her world instead of trying to bring her back into mine. Just stuff that I've learned here through these classes, just little stuff like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will make sure you get the copy of the slides this afternoon for the recording. Hopefully we'll see y'all tomorrow. The support group is at 11 tomorrow, 11 a.m. And then of course, everything we're doing next week, something every day. Next week, we are doing the pure holiday passive on Wednesday from 11:30 to 12:30. So we do have that program. I'll send you the calendar. I'm sure you've gotten it already, but I'll attach it anyway in the email when I send you the slides. So you have that.
Okay.
Right. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.